Hello.
Hello, just us two again, probably.
We're trying.
You can lead a horse to water, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not even, it seems.
that's true.
But yes, we can point the horse to water, but you
Yeah.
we'll see. But yeah, nobody's saying anything about so you were in the Tech Alliance meeting, right?
Yes.
Yes. What do you think? No.
I didn't
Hi, Joe.
didn't see that I would find value in participating.
Yeah. I'm still kind of not sure that there's no Joel.
Hello? Oh my God. Sorry. I was like, my cam and mic were off and I couldn't turn them on. And I realized I needed to like press the got it on this video is being recorded.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Took me a second. Hello.
We were at a meeting last Monday,
Yes.
2 days ago, of the Collaborative Tech Alliance, and we were just debriefing while waiting for others. They got a small amount of money to work on collaborative technology and maybe connecting different tools for thoughts or social or maybe more. There is an interest in interop, which I find useful. It's a tiny amount of money, and the value for me is clearly not the money because it's 30K to be spread over quite a few projects. But in terms of getting community and interest and visibility, who knows? I've been asked to participate in something else, which I don't think I can talk about yet. Some new player came in and asked me, and so I don't even know if I can talk about it. And that may take priority, but
is this other group related to CDL or OGM at all, or
no? Sorry, the collaborative tech, there's a lot of common players, but the other group, no, it's not related. The collaborative tech, there's a lot of people we know from OGM, including God, I'm sorry, I'm half asleep today. Michael,
Gardner?
Oh, I think so. That's right. Anyway, there's a lot of familiar faces. I feel aligned with the values of the crowd, but is there going to be something useful come out of it? To be determined. But it's, on the other hand, I'll be very honest, right now, it's a community doing stuff or trying to do stuff together. And right now, I wish I could say as much of this one and no blame to the people involved. I mean, I know Bentley is extremely active in OGM, and I'm sure you're doing your own stuff, Joel, but right now, this particular locus is not, there's not much shared activity. How it is.
Right.
And
just out of curiosity, the like collaborative tech group, is there like a link or
yeah.
where there?
I got
Absolutely.
Get to that.
I put it in the chat.
You were faster.
Thanks. Oh,
I was looking at it at the time. I was like, oh. Because I just realized I don't know if they're talking about collaborative like technology for collaboration or collaboration between technologies or both. It's probably both.
Both. That's absolutely a both.
Collaboration
between technologies for collaboration. Yes.
Okay.
Which is part of our agenda, except, yeah, we have more
Right.
of a structured, argumentation-centric conversation angle. And I don't think they'd be close to that. I don't know that they automatically embrace it because, like, for example, Tibet Sprague, who not started, but is one of the spearheads of this movement, is very much behind a project called Hilo, which is an open source Facebook, which is, great, valuable. I'm being a bit dismissive. It's a bit better than that, but it's a social platform. It's fine. It has a social platform. But it's not the same thing as
Like
argument
sense making.
centric. Yeah.
Right.
But he is clearly interested in sense making. So I think it's like, yeah, sure. Can you help us make it sense making? But there's a lot of people in that crowd who are interested in commons and shared ownership of IP, and how do we get out of the proprietary model, which, again, great, especially if you're speaking about collaborating. I mean, how do you make the results of the collaboration available and non-proprietary and not enclosed? I mean, in another conversation Bentley and I were in Monday, and we were discussing the issue of the US patent system going from first to document an ID to first to file, and what that would mean. And I read a bit more, and it's not as catastrophic as I thought, because in theory, you can't file if it's been publicly published elsewhere before. But still, in theory, if you have proof that you've worked on something and somebody else filed, they can take it and file it away, and no litigation saying I had this idea first, which on the one hand can be counterproductive and used for trolling. On the other hand, if it's about it's a way to create enclosures, and if you have made something public, that should count. And it seems it still might. Still need to understand the legalese. So that's one thing they're worried about. They're worried about, there's a lot of people from the DAO, Web3, crypto tokens, how to build community, how to build incentives, how to build. I'm, on the one hand, very aligned with the goal of how to build incentives and autonomy and da-da-da-da. I think crypto is a terrible way to do it, but that's me. Hello, Tim. Yay. Haven't seen you in a while.
It's been rough. It's been really rough. Yeah. But crypto is the right way to go, always.
Yes, of course. So Tim, meet Joel.
Hi.
Is Joel? That's how you say it?
It's Joel. It's Joel.
Joel. Oh, because
sorry.
my brother is Joel as well, and that's how you say it, is Joel.
Sorry, that's me using a French pronunciation.
Joel.
Joel.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I guess what's your story, Joel? Quick.
So I guess I'm working on like my own like problem solving tool. It's more of like a visualization of information related to problems. It's I guess it puts like problems and solutions as first class, and then like argument as like second class to that. So like there's implicit claims in the visualization.
Is this related to the maps thing, or is it just a coincidence?
Coincidence, I guess.
Yeah.
Maps, that was the like contest, right? Was that a contest?
Yeah,
or is that like a yeah, not related to that. Yeah, that's Bentley just put the link in the Zoom for it's not like very functional yet, and there's not even a backend yet. It's all like
I'm sure people have already told you or brought up that the first problem with problems and solutions is the debate over whether or not it's a problem, right? Is something really a problem?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that's there is that implicit claim to argue over in my visualization
Yeah.
in the tool, but yeah, so that's that. I've been working on it for like 6 months as a side project, but I'm going full time on it in 2 weeks. So
Oh,
pretty
really?
excited for that. Just
Wow.
funding myself, but yeah, so
Yeah, you definitely sound like one of us. I had an idea, and it's very related to everything we're doing, and it's trying to build it. Yeah, I'm glad you can take time out to work on it.
right, yes, very privileged, so excited for that. But that's the summary. Definitely related to the like argument space, and I'm sure we'll get into like nuances about my opinions on things, I guess, as we go. But, yeah.
All right. Well, is there
Generally,
an agenda now that I'm stumbling into the
No
meeting
agenda.
halfway through or partway through?
I have an item, but we don't have an official agenda yet.
Okay. I didn't mean
Yeah.
to derail anything. So
No. We were just discussing the Collaborative Tech Alliance where Bentley and I were Monday. And who's there and is that something we should be part of, and how is it related to us or not? And in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. It's more generic collaboration tools and collaboration between collaboration tools and collaborators and big commons and common project emphasis. But on the other hand, I think they do realize that, hey, we have a bunch of, they're very ecosystem and interop centric. And they do realize that they each have their use case and their specific data model, and they need something common for that. So I think if we brought something in more structured, it would be welcomed. I think. I certainly push the idea of, we need to make our respective requirements clearer rather than say, let's work on this thing. Think in terms of what are the common requirements as opposed to which project, what I mean. Let's work on which project. And other than that, yeah, there's a lot that's been happening here that I don't know what you've been following or not following, but we've been a bit lost because it was only 3 of us, very much. Carl came last Friday, but there's been a lull in the membership here.
yeah, and I'm 25% of it. If we're going by previous accounts, I guess my 25% was missing. I've had a hard time getting any time. So
Yeah.
yeah, it might continue like that, but I can't predict. I'm going to do my best, but
okay. But yeah, I mean, you're not the only one. Others have disappeared. And we haven't had news from Felix or Steven in a long while. Steven sometimes says, I'll be coming soon. So Bentley, you had an item?
Yeah, and I guess maybe two. One is I put a post in general talking about kind of the word truth. I thought it might be helpful if we do a definition internally for that. Because for truth, TRUTH.
Oh, lovely. Yes.
Just and to clarify, not to try and define how other people use it. Because Stephen kind of came in and said, well, I think some people mean this. I don't care. There's a lot of dummies out there. Let's not. What do we mean when we're talking about it here? Let's make it narrow. And just because even though explicitly the CDL, the Canonical Debate Lab, is not seeking truth, one of the kind of secondary goals is hopefully that there's people have a better understanding of reality, and that's kind of where I'm getting at. So I think we could talk through kind of my definition, other definitions. The other thing that I'm doing is the Open Global Mind Group next week sometime. We're hosting a Sense Doing is kind of the name for it, and it's kind of taking a look at a contentious issue and trying to make sense of it. The topic is going to be kind of COVID / how would a healthy society suggest or mandate wearing masks in a pandemic. Would and when would you, if you would? So that's kind of the thing. Now they're going to get more into the problem solution space and the social space and less of the actual debate or the CDL. But as you know, all of these things have a core of claims. So that's why it might be interesting to this group, because at some point people are going to make claims and they're going to need to be recorded.
Okay, we're still choosing agenda, I guess. You've brought up two things to discuss, and I have one other thing I wanted to mention that's not so deep, so maybe I'll just mention it real quick, which is that I had a meeting, a conversation this week with, I think his name's Adam Young. He's the guy that reached out to all of us about, let me make sure that's his name. He reached out to all of us about the AI stuff he's doing, right? Which is to essentially use AI to process natural language and break everything down into an argument map, and through that decide what is true and what is false. I think a lot of you were included on email threads with Jamie. Do you remember that? Let me see if let me confirm his name. Yeah, it's Adam Young. It happened like he showed up about a month ago, I would say. And since then, I've been trying to find time to have a conversation with him. That's how strapped I've been for time. But anyway, I had a conversation with him.
I have no
Jamie
trace.
No?
Nope.
Maybe you're not on it. Let me see who's on it. Who was on the threads? Jamie. Oh, maybe it was just Society Library people that were on it. I thought somebody else from CDL had made a comment. I guess I'm only seeing, he reached out then to Society Library, I guess. And in the conversation, like, Jamie brought up a lot of things about some of our position on the truth, which gets into probably what's going to be our main topic today. I brought up the concerns about trust. For something to really work, you need to have trust, and I don't see anyone trusting an AI. So that's a hurdle. And I brought up, some of the difficulties in mapping, right? For example, definitions and language, and ambivalence. And he was looking more from a commercial angle, like what is something people would pay money for. He was trying to look at a different way to find some sort of business model in there. One area that he was looking at, which I think is probably the richest area, one of them is using it in law for lawyers. The reason that I think is like, if I were to do what he's doing, I would certainly go there, is because law is an area in which they do everything they can to remove ambiguity from language, right? But you still have judges. The role of judges is essentially to parse through the ambiguity that's left, right? But the approach that he was talking about is, maybe if lawyers are trying to figure out the way the law works, an AI, I could see an AI interpreting laws and coming out, pulling together casework and so on, and precedents and all that, and giving you probabilities of how things would be interpreted and that sort of. That sounds interesting. I mean, he wants to know what's true and what's not true, and we can start talking about that again in our discussion. But I was like, I don't think we believe in objective truth. We believe that there's a reality and there's philosophy. You could go as far as you can in philosophy, but like, as far as truth, yeah, I don't know if an AI could do it. But it was an interesting conversation. He was interested in the things I brought up, which were a lot of the CDL learnings. And maybe it might be interesting for him to join us, to learn from us and to help us in thinking and so on. That's where we left it, was just sort of, oh, interesting. Okay, bye. It was like in a conversation. And that's that.
Okay, I have a lot to say about truth. I have a bit of a discomfort working with people who are especially like explicitly looking for a business model because precisely afraid of enclosure.
Right. We know we have, right. And that's one of the things I warned him about is like, I think his intention to a large degree matches ours. We want to solve a world problem. And he sees it as I do, as this is probably the problem.
Okay.
All other problems and solutions, it's hard to come up with a solution to anything else until you've solved the problem of human epistemics and collaboration and yeah.
But yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I don't oppose looking at a business model for it because we'd like to live off this. But
I warned him about capture, right?
Yes.
And we talked about Golden, right? Which is
Yes.
in my opinion, it's like a business version of the CDL. And
Absolutely.
because of their business needs, I see their model as being limited and not going to be able to solve our problem, right?
I agree. And the problem with Golden is precisely that it's looking, from my point of view, well, there's many, but one of them is precisely that they're looking for true statements. And what's that? As opposed to supported statements. And I think that if I have to have a take on what you're saying, you're asking, Bentley, I think it's very interesting to see what is evidence for, what are supported claims and supported by what. And there is a bit of an infinite regress problem there. If you say this is supported by this and this also has no evidence.
Potentially infinite.
It's
my theory is that it's not infinite, but that is not my intuition, not even theory. I hope.
I think that it's pragmatically finite. There's a point where you get to you make a statement that
you have accept bottom premises and move on, or axioms or whatever. You accept that and move on.
A point where people at least give up on going deeper.
Which is less interesting than the point where people, well, it's not that they give up because they're exhausted. They give up because, yeah, no, I won't contest that one. Seems solid enough, and I'll try to find another angle if I disagree, which is fair. But certainly there's a point where you expect the regress of contestation to stop in practice. And I think that's good enough in real life. But there is another thing. I speak often about the prediction accuracy. I think it's important, and this goes to trust. Tim was asking, do you trust an AI? Well, the problem is, do you know it's an AI? I expect the information space to be flooded by AI-generated disinformation soon.
Well, I mean, I'm starting from a basis that you don't trust people, right? So if you don't know it's an AI, you think it might be a person. I'm assuming there's already a lack of trust. So, like fact checkers, right?
Yeah.
Why is fact checking fail?
And fact checking works mostly, actually. I mean, a lot of people, not fully, but a lot of people do go to Snopes for what it's worth.
What I would say is it fails at creating a consensus.
That is correct. The question of, can we get a consensus just from discussions is a valid one. I was in another conversation, totally different crowd of people very much coming from a meditation background. And one of them was in a retreat. And was not a meditation retreat, was led by meditators, but he said, this was a really diverse crowd, as in at some point somebody asked, do we all agree not to use violence if we don't reach an agreement? And quite a few hands did not raise. And it was that level of disagreement. But they got to work together hard and a lot of concrete physical work. And that created a bond. And he was saying, you know, the trust you get from physical contact and working on something together is totally different from the one you get from pure conversations. It's a very interesting observation. That was Ken Homer, which some of you know. Bentley does, I think. Whose opinion I value highly. I don't think
Well,
it's
next
that
we need
simple.
to define trust, but yeah.
No, but and let's back off a bit. I don't want to say epistemic work is hopeless. Obviously, I wouldn't be here. I do think epistemic work is useful. At least identifying where the problems are. I wonder if getting everybody to agree is a realistic goal. I do think that making the most obvious disagreement explicit and, you know, knowing why we disagree is already a gain, and being able to help people have a bit of broader perspective on their own beliefs is definitely an attainable goal, as is shown by the street epistemology movement and the deep canvassing. If you read that book, The How Minds Change, it is done. And I think this is something we can achieve. Solving wicked problems through conversation has been done, again, in Presence IBIS, success, history of success. Mediators do it, facilitators do it, it can be done. It's laborious. Can we scale that up? And that for me is a real question. But to go back to trust, I think you cannot have trust without history. I keep speaking about the super forecasters making predictions, and then people saying, yeah, that their understanding was borne out through time. And this is how you gain trust. You trust that the person is aligned with reality over time. Tim.
Yeah.
So here's where I beg to differ that crypto is useful, because and maybe they're
I even
talking
agree with that one.
Trust, you know, they call it trustless, right? Trust is not, it's the absence of the need for trust, where, you know, you trust the state of the blockchain to the point that they call it a truth system. It's a system of truth. The source of truth is the blockchain, right?
Predictions is pretty much, it's one of the very few real blockchain use cases I see. Recording predictions.
Right, yeah, we've been through that. But no, I think recording claims, recording an argument map, a shared
no, I agree with
argument map is a use case. And so that's the kind of trust that I'm talking about when I talk about trust and AI and that sort of thing, where you wouldn't trust an AI, but you could trust a totally transparent database of all arguments and claims that is fully open to everybody and is strongly censorship resistant, right? That's the kind of trust that I'm interested in.
So I would say that you know, kind of prediction records and prediction, that's measuring someone's ability to have, I'm going to call it intuitive predictability. But that's not something I really care about, training the human mind to make predictions based on observations. My goal is to look at the available known facts, whatever they are, and looking at what would be an accurate conclusion based on the available information on whether a claim is correct or incorrect. So it's not there's no trust. Trust is not a factor. Each item is trusted based on its claims and its sources and it's surviving the combat from other people to say why it shouldn't be trusted. So trusting an individual is not the space that I'm interested in.
Okay. 1 second. First, I will contend there's not that much difference between trusting a protection and trusting claim validation. I mean, some of claim validation is almost formal logic, and it's not about the person, and who cares? What is important is the person aligned with reality? And it can be about the future, or it can be about disentangling a complex mess of facts. But how well does the person's understanding align with later verifiable facts? Now, does later represent it came up later, or we dug deeper into the pile of past facts and we found more correlations? That's not precisely important. What is important is somebody able to have consistent with other sources that you also trust, including your senses.
Yeah, but that's just going at it a completely different direction. I mean,
well, I'm saying it's the same direction. Now, where you have a point is to point out this is very individual, and it shouldn't be. And I agree. Institutions, we have trust in institutions that, like scientific journals and university departments, that they will be self-correcting, not that they'll be always right, but that they have social mechanism of self-correction so that what comes out of them can be trusted in the long run. And again, that's the same thing.
But that's but neither of those are what I'm talking about. I don't care about the person.
I feel like we started off on a tangent, didn't we? Aren't we supposed to be talking about truth and not trust?
Well, yeah, and that's one thing I'm trying to get back. But just real quickly, I don't care about the accuracy of the individual or the accuracy of the institution. Just on an individual claim-to-claim basis, is there evidence to believe this claim? That's the main thing I'm trying to get at. All the other stuff can be done later, but that's secondary.
And I'm saying if the claim exists disincarnated, you have zero evidence except to ground it socially.
Yeah,
there's no reason to believe any claim except through its social trust.
No, what? I mean, it all has some atom of social trust, but the correlation of the fact that some person or institution said it has nothing to do with whether I would trust that the main claim that's like they're claiming that global warming's true. I'm not going to trust that just based on who said it. It's what's the reason? Now, at some point, there's studies, and I have to trust that those scientists did the study, and I trust the process that other scientists reviewed that, right? So, but that's not trusting an individual, and that's not correlating it to an individual's thing.
I did say individual or institution or process.
Or institution, individual, an individual institution.
Or process. You just said process.
Well, right, but I'm talking about. It's still a multiple of those. It's all of those together. It's never a single one. So I don't need to ever correlate it back to an individual or correlate it back to a process, and unless it's needed in the evidence. Sometimes the evidence will be, well, I looked out my window, or here's a photo, and we have to trust those individuals. But the top thing is not the trust. The trust is an individual thing of the whole things below. But it's the collection of all those individual trusts. But that's not the main thing.
I'm okay, either really not following you, but I don't see how you can say that there's any fact that you know that is not grounded in trusting your senses, trusting other people, trusting
but I'm saying since they all are, it's not an
process.
Important distinction. Since everything is, it's not an important thing to discuss. Everything we have to trust, and we correlate between multiple areas to find trust and correlation between the things. So the individual trust scores are not the focus.
I agree with that.
Well, then let's talk about truth and not trust.
No. I agree, and yet I don't disagree with the conclusion. It's not about individual trust, but it is about collective trust, and collective trust is nothing but aggregated individual trust. I'm saying there's nothing but aggregated individual trust, including processes, by the way. Why do you trust the process? Well, and experience, of course. But even then, like interpretation of experience is tied to aggregated individual trust.
I don't think it's a metric worth tracking. I think there's more valuable metrics.
Okay, I don't think there's other metrics that exist
Well,
that
there's,
are not
Let's-
grounded
we're looking at
ultimately
it. We're
in.
looking at it, right? It all goes down to that, but everything's made of atoms. But I often don't go to that level when I'm talking about the chair in my living room. It's not the best way to frame the decision.
Okay, what else do
frame
you
the
propose?
process. It's so like if we put up a claim that this study says this and no one doesn't trust that study, we don't need to talk about the trustworthiness of that study until someone disagrees with it, and then we can go down it.
There
So
I
we
agree.
can make the assumption of, and there's all these different types of trust. I don't feel like categorizing them and measuring.
No, but I will. Okay, let me do a bit of a reduction of absurdum here. You're saying everybody trusts that study until somebody disagrees. I agree with that process, by the way. It makes sense to me. But it's also true that my initial response to this study was assume the researchers are in good faith if it comes from this journal. And my initial response from this other study coming from that other journal will be, I assume the researchers are in bad faith until proven otherwise, because I trust this institution more than that institution. It's social trust that makes me trust this study and distrust that study.
Right, but there's no point in discussing the trust levelness of that institution until someone.
No, there is. What I'm saying is even my initial handling of what do I think about this study? Is it trust but verify or distrust but verify? This is based on social clues.
But I don't care. Until someone disagrees with it, I don't care. That's not the
Okay,
important
cool.
piece.
And again, that process is fine. And then the question is, how will I react to the person disagreeing? And then what are my social clues for trusting that this person is not a troll?
Right, but you bring up the reasons why you don't trust it. And
Yeah.
I would rather focus on the reasons rather than the trust. And the reason could be because I don't trust the organization. Well, why don't you trust the organization? Well, they were wrong here, here, and here, and here. Then we start going through it. But at every point, it's the reasons, it's not the trust.
But what I'm saying is those reasons, like they were wrong here, here, and here. That's an everybody's right sometimes and wrong sometimes. And so you're creating an aggregated score of how often they align to other things you believe. And that's how you know that it's believe truthful or believe distruthful. That is a form of trust.
That's one way to handle it. And I think there's almost an infinite number of ways of handling it. So I'd rather not go down to that level of detail until it's necessary. That is not the core level of detail. The core level of detail is reasons. If a reason is attacked, then we can look at the other reasons for the attack. One of the reasons could be trust, but there's an almost infinite number of reasons to distrust or trust something.
But again, we're in an environment now where every reason will be attacked. Creating attacks against reasons is something that will be done on a casual basis by AIs.
Right, but there's a lot of ways. Well, I don't have my system's not open, so that's not an issue. But the point is that I would rather focus on the reasons than the trust. Trust is one of the reasons why you might not do it, but then there's underlying reasons on why you don't trust it. It's always reasons, it's not trust.
I think this is naive.
I think it's just a different way of looking at the exact same thing, and I don't think it's worth discussing.
Can we get back to the main point, which is a definition for truth? Isn't that?
Yeah, I mean, so the naive definition that I put out there, which I don't think people have read because they were surprised at it, and this is just the first toss up. It's not even close to correct. But I was just saying, like, a mostly accurate map of a subset of measurable reality. Probably never a perfect map. A map is not territory. which is the last kind of post in the general tab.
How are you using truth here? I mean, because this is
The
why we need to
definition.
figure out the scope of the definition, right? Because
It's how, when
Um,
we're talking about the goal of CDL, and when we're talking about truth, when we use the word truth between us, the important stuff, not how other people are using it, but when we're saying how true is this claim?
so yeah, so that's what I want to get at is, are we talking about in the context of a claim? Are we saying a claim is true or not, right? So I've already abandoned truth as a term. It's the first term we all go to when talking about a claim. Is a claim true or not? But since
Yeah, we
a
tend to
year
use
ago or whatever, I've
accuracy,
abandoned
or we-
for, well, I would say, you know, does the viewer agree with
but that, yeah,
its agreement with the claim?
right, but that's a
Um,
different thing.
It is.
It is, but I don't think that, like,
You don't think it's ever
there is a
useful to
truth score.
say that car is about to run you over? That's not a useful thing to scream at someone that they're about to be hit by a car. You know, it's like there are some things that are objective truths. Should we not have a delineation between this is an objective truth and
Well,
this
do you want to delineate between what claims could be true and what claims can't? Are we going to have a truth score for claims that can be
I
true
don't think
versus
it's
claims
worthwhile
that?
discussing any claims that we can't determine whether or not they match up with objective reality. And that's one of the things I'm saying. That's why I'm saying our
like,
truth is
what is it
like a
called?
matching. That's what I'm saying, that
Dontology. I don't remember like these philosophy terms, but like, you should do this. There's no objective truth to that.
That's the ontology.
oh
Anything,
yeah, how's there
yeah.
not an objective truth saying you should do this?
Because first of all,
You're saying you will, I mean, that's shortened for you will benefit from this. That's a claim. And that's
No,
a claim
but
what are
based
the
upon
trade-offs?
reality
You have
and
to bring
prediction of
up the
future reality.
trade-offs, right?
Huh?
Because it depends on what model you use to evaluate it.
Well, no,
Right.
right, but yeah.
You should
but
do it for my
we're,
good.
We're designing,
You should
one of the
do
things
it
I'm doing
because
is designing models of that's, I mean, that's one of the main things I'm doing is designing models to evaluate claims, and the claims, the way you evaluate them is how do they match up with objective reality? And if we're talking about something that doesn't match up without objective reality, that's a waste of my time. I don't, give me a claim that doesn't have some sort of, that its value isn't whether or not it, a value that's worth discussing, that has nothing to do with objective reality.
we should have Chinese for dinner.
Well, that, if you're allergic to Chinese food, that could have a huge impact.
Sure, it could. What if I
Right.
don't?
Well, then why are you discussing it if it's not something that has a huge impact? Is it worth discussing if it's not?
Good God, if
something?
we
Like,
don't
if you really don't
choose
care where you're
something
gonna
to eat,
go,
I'm gonna get hangry, and then we're not gonna be able to talk about anything. It's something worth discussing. It's something that it may not have a huge
it's
impact,
worth
but
discussing
it's
because
something.
you need to eat and you're going out to dinner, so it has value. And
I
it
mean,
is,
basically
the
what you're saying
objectiveness
is
in this case
anything
is what is your current
related to
preference at
art,
the time.
anything
Just
related to art is not worth discussing,
No,
right?
because there's a lot of
'Cause
objective information about art.
there's a lot
Yeah,
that
but,
isn't.
But the
but
problem is
subjective.
the discussion is about, is this good art? No, but that's the wrong question. The question is, do I think this is good art? And there's an answer to that, and that's an objective reality. My
And
answer
that's
is,
an
I think
agreement
that's good art.
that's
That's
your
an
agreement to the statement, this is good
No,
art.
that's a subjective reality, Bentley. But
It's an
Yeah.
objective. It's an objective statement that my opinion is X. That's an objective statement.
Sure.
So if
it's an objective
as
statement
long
that you
as it-
claim that your opinion is X.
Well, yeah, but in either way, the important bit is the actual, where the rubber meets the road. There's no point in discussing, can art be good? Or, I mean, people enjoy those discussions, but it's in the discussion. It doesn't really have a huge impact. And it's, to me, a waste of time. And I can't, there's no value in building.
You haven't seen the prices at those art auctions?
No,
It
but
has a
that's,
huge
but
impact.
right, but the objective part
Okay.
of that is what is someone willing to pay for the art, and that is an objective question. And that's worth discussing.
But it is predicated on people agreeing, so social and trust, people agreeing that this is valuable art, and that's a subject,
right.
That's an intersubjective evaluation. I actually personally,
I mean, to some degree,
there's
to some degree, you're running into chaos theory here, right? What argues against a lot of cases, Bentley, is chaos theory, right? Where to get to, if there's an objective truth out there, it's so complex and relies on so many variables that there's no way we will assemble all the knowledge in order to predict where it's going next. And in fact, the chaos theory says that that's not even possible, even if you knew everything, every
That's-
atom and every position and every direction, right?
That's completely unrelated.
It's a no, anything that is
I'm not making a claim that there is an objective reality that is holistic and covers everything, and that's what they're talking about. I'm saying, are there some claims that will impact my life and my future that I care about, that I want to determine what they are? And that's the objective. I'm not saying that there is a physical objective reality. I'm saying the objective reality that we are experiencing. I mean, really,
I have sympathy for. I have
who
sympathy
cares
for
whether
that.
there's an actual objective reality? The point is, if I do this action, will I be hurt by it? Right?
Okay,
What's the point of doing all
okay,
this if we're
okay,
not
wait,
going to
wait.
discuss it?
Here's a whole category within our model, as we've discussed so far, of debate, where I think you'll find it hard to draw delineation. I think what you're saying is that the claim immigration is bad doesn't fit into what you would like to map and model.
Yeah.
Because the answer to that question is so contextual that there's no point in an overall statement of immigration is bad.
It's a nonsensical question.
It's a nonsensical question, right?
It's too ambiguous to be answered.
Okay, but at what point of specificity does that claim suddenly become worth discussing? Is it immigration?
There's not an exact point, but I think a lot of people, the problem is that people are not introspecting, saying that are we being specific enough? And to push them towards that, we need to say it. But there is no, there may be a line, but I'm not trying to find it. But at some point, and you will never get it exacting, but at some point it'll be like, oh, we can get to a certain level of accuracy with reality. We still got to talk about what's our goal. And is our goal?
Right, but then it seems to me you're kind of saying that claims are worth discussing at the point there is a decision to be made at the top. Like it only is worth having when there's an impact to the outcome.
Yeah, maybe an impact or something like that. I mean, that's definitely the only thing I'm interested in talking about. I think we waste a lot of time bringing in things that not helping
well,
people
but take the immigration as bad example, right?
Well,
by posing something at such an
one.
abstract level, one thing we've talked about is it breaks down because you really, in order to answer it, you need to follow up with an if these conditions are true, right? And you will have a concrete debate about, say, an immigration plan, right? Where a decision is to be made and you can get to specifics. But those ifs, those conditions, abstract into essentially a general policy discussion about any immigration policy. The same ifs would come up every time, right? Is it going to be good for jobs? Is it going to be good for the economy? Is it humane? Is it, do we have housing? Is it going to destroy our society, our culture? Is it, so there's all these ifs that would be useful to have in an abstract debate because you could quickly apply them to a concrete decision.
Yeah, I mean, that's useful, but I would prefer to focus on getting to a detailed question and finding the answers.
But that's
And then
exactly
that reuse of claim data is helpful, but I don't think that that's the core of the problem.
I think what Tim is describing is precisely how to get to that precise question from an imprecise question. And I agree, like, I understand what you're saying. I don't think everything is objective reality. I think there's a lot of important things that are not objective reality, but the space of objective reality, and for example, predictions, like which action should I take? What are the likely consequences? How desirable are those consequences? Those can be quantified up to a point, and there are many important cases that fall in that category, and that's absolutely worth talking about. It's also, by the way, a solved problem. There's a whole
It is nowhere near a solved problem.
It's totally a solved problem. There's a whole field of,
Where is there a solved problem? Give me an example.
I mean, that's what Delphi is about, and that's what decision theory and risk evaluation and reliability.
In
There's
very specific domains, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
There's not a
No.
generic one
that's not
across that domain.
No, it is generic. Like a lot of these techniques are generic. I'm not saying we have solve the problem always, because new problems come up and then we need to re-break it down according to the specification of the solutions. Right?
I don't find those solutions sufficient enough for what I'm trying to accomplish, for changing people's mind.
Maybe yeah, I don't know if that's a realistic goal. But
everything else is a waste.
And there I am with you, actually, but I still ask, is that a realistic goal? However, let's
increasing it. Let's just say increase agreement by 1%.
No, that is a realistic goal, or help people gain perspective, as I always say, which I think is a realistic and worth striving for, and that's what I'm also on. So I sympathize with the narrow scope you're defining. I think it is part of a bigger scope, and I'm interested in the bigger scope. That's me, because I don't think there's a clear boundary between the scopes, and we need to find how to help people go from fuzzy, emotional, imprecise questions to the very precise ones that are tractable by Bayesian blah 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 methods, and how to get people from here to there and to understand where things are. So and that's not a solved problem. I agree with you, but there is a solved problem of decision making in probabilistically defined terms, and with and there is the unsolved problem of getting people to reach that point, and it is a useful problem. Not everything can reach that point, and not everything important. And a lot of important things fall outside even being able to reach that point. That doesn't mean they're useless, but still, it's an important point. We need to discuss it. However, I'm looking at your definition, and I'm afraid that you're just begging the question. You've transferred the truth question into the word accurate. Everything, what is truth? It's the accuracy of the map. Is the map accurate to a subset of measurable reality? So I don't think this definition that you propose.
Well, some definitions of truth do not have reality in them. And so this is narrowing it some.
Okay.
I don't think it's actually, no definition will ever take out all ambiguity. This is more narrow than the generic definition of truth. If we need, I can't think of a way to get it more narrow than an accurate. I mean, so just because it's not this complete, just because people can't misconstrue it doesn't mean it's not a useful, narrow.
Right. But
so if you have a better definition,
what I'm saying is measuring accuracy is comparing it to another thing of whom the truth is taken for granted, and of which the truth is taken for granted. What I'm saying is, it's not just that it's, okay, fair enough, reference to reality is making a further claim that your definition of truth is about alignment with an external reality and assumes an objective external reality, which I don't know if I believe, but I'm fine with. And you're right, that is narrower. But I'm saying it has no heuristic value. It doesn't make the problem any narrower in its heuristics. It makes it It makes it have more ontological presuppositions, and that way it is narrower, but it doesn't change anything to heuristics.
Yeah, it wasn't intended to. It's just so that when we're talking about getting at the truth in this group, we're not, there's a lot of people who have personal truths, and there's like religious truths, and there's, truths about art,
Yep.
right? And I'm
Yep.
like, no, when we're talking here, it's a term, an internal term, that we're talking about getting to something. And something about the world being more predictable, and we can make decisions.
And in a way, I was going there as well, and I agree. Truth is a bit of, in French, we say concept bateau. It's a boat that carries tons of different things. It's a kind of and
so maybe you're talking about facts. Something is factual.
I don't know that
verifiable.
boat's any smaller.
I would say there's a difference between truth and fact. Fact, in fact, is a kind of claim that I've talked about.
But facts can be both true and false. And the important thing is, I'm saying that we're talking about how truthful a fact is.
In fact,
so using the word
fact is a claim that I would be comfortable applying true or false as a score, as opposed to agreement or disagreement.
But that
fact
means fact
kind of
cannot be
claim
used.
Are you looking at falsifiability, Popper's falsifiability? Like falsifiable claims is a category. It's a subcategory.
That's interesting. Maybe I can't think of an exception to that. Maybe I am.
And certainly the set of claims is much larger than the set of falsifiable claims. I would argue that the set of important claims is much larger than the set of falsifiable claims. But falsifiable claims are an important subcategory to which the question of truth can be asked is, can this be falsified? Do we have a falsification process or many falsification process? That's a perfectly important category. And maybe that's the one you want to focus on, and that's valid. And distinguishing between falsifiable and unfalsifiable facts has been extremely useful.
Except that as an example, Bentley has used the "we should do X," right? And I would not consider that falsifiable.
I would.
Yeah, but you said that would be worth discussing in your system, which means you would accept debating we should do X, and I wouldn't consider that
X
falsifiable.
is extremely narrow. Yeah.
Good point. On the other hand,
policy specific.
Specific policy change.
One can argue, and I agree, it's a distinct argument, that we should do X is translatable into an assertion. Doing X is expected to yield result Y, which we desire, and that is falsifiable. We can, try it and not obtain Y, and
it's a shorthand for that.
but it's a translation. It's not a shorthand. It's work. It's a translation. We took an unfalsifiable prescription and we translated it into a falsifiable claim. With the deontic statement. A combination of falsifiable claim.
But a lot of what Joe brought up about there is important stuff. I guess what I'm not phrasing properly is that I kind of want to solve. I still think there's some unsolved, or solves a bad word. There's an opportunity to improve the agreement over this area of facts, and I think that that's the richest vein to mine right now. And by taking out kind of the stuff about art and love and all that other stuff, and focusing it, and I'd like to have a word that says, hey, we're getting to this this predictability about the future or past.
And
as the value that's coming out, in my case, the main value that's coming out of this endeavor. And when I can't use the word truth, I can't speak, or another word, I can't speak to that concept.
I think you're looking at facts as in not as falsifiable claims, but facts as in observations. And on the one hand, which are pretty much assumed true. Again, you assume that the researcher hasn't falsified. And this is where I agree. A solid record of statements in blockchain form is useful. So observations on the one hand, and generalizations, and that's the realm of science, right? You're trying to make a statement that explains or is a consistent generalization over a bunch of observation, and that is not falsified by any known observation. And again, making that easier to understand and easier to detect the inconsistencies, because that's what we're talking about. I think consistent is one word you're looking for. When we have a bunch of fact that a lot of observation whose truth we do not a priori refuse, and then saying, can we make this general statement out of these? Is that consistent with the observations? That's an important question. When I say unfalsifiable, it also means, is there an observation that would falsify it as generalization? And again, that's the realm of science as defined by Popper. It's a perfectly useful realm to delimitate. It's not everything, but it's a very useful thing, and it's a very useful thing to separate from the rest. It's not what interests me most.
Well, I think falsifiability goes a bit further. I feel more it's in probabilities.
And that's the thing. And this is where I was going back to Tetlock, right? Tetlock is about, okay, when you don't have absolute, when you introduce stochastics, right? You're not able to make absolute statements like this holds for all the cases, but this holds for 70% of the cases. How believable is a stochastic prediction? And being able to say, yes, this is a good stochastic prediction, including the stochasticity of it. And that's what Tetlock's doing. Or you can go the Giri-Upperl route of saying, how can we distinguish the causal graph that yields this probabilistic behavior? And is there an experiment that will allow us to distinguish the causal graphs with hidden variables? That's, again, perfectly valid and useful. And it's unfortunate that more people don't understand that, and making that more explicit is a useful realm of activity. I'm more interested in getting people from woolly thinking to that claim when this more precise activity can be useful, because I see woolly thinking as much more of a problem, but that's just my preference.
I forgot
my interest.
What woolly thinking is.
What I mean is when the terms are underdefined, such as, yes, exactly. Tim gave a perfectly valid example. Immigration is bad. What does that even mean?
Right. Well, yeah, the more we look into it, the problem is terms and phrasing, right? That is probably the biggest issue.
Absolutely. The what does it even mean?
Which is what we're doing here, right? We're trying to come up with the term truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things is when you're trying to say, why is this phrasing of it not helpful, is that it's not something that I can kind of determine the truth of, is normally the way I'd say it, but I can't use the word truth. So
let's look at scientific truth, right? As a phrase, right? Scientific truth is something that is taken to not be truth, right? Scientific truth isn't truth. It's what we take as being true at the moment, because we haven't falsified it and we haven't come up with a better explanation or truth.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. I kind of think everything's that way.
No, but I think this is interesting. You remember when we were speaking about Tim's example about the confinement will cost more than the pandemic
yeah.
itself.
Lockdown.
The lockdown will cost more than the health cost of the pandemic. And I said, you know, the problem with that statement is you could have 1,000 different people with making that sentence, believing it, and making totally different statements in actuality because they have a different,
because of hidden premises.
There's
Yeah.
an implicit estimation of how much is the confinement likely to cost, hidden premises about what will be the human cost of the pandemic, and some hidden conversion factor. So there's 3 hidden variables which could have totally different values for our hypothetical 1,000 persons. And so these are, infinitely many different statements occupying different spaces of a 3-dimensional.
Yeah, but I sort of had a design for solving that.
More generally, just before you go there, a statement is meaningless if it has different explanations, interpretations, where one can be true and the other can be false. And I think this is a general thing.
Does that fall into what you're trying to solve with hyperknowledge right now or not?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I agree that that's extremely important. And I'm just not focusing on it right now because I'm waiting for you to. So yes,
Yes.
I agree that that is extremely important. That may even be more important than the part I'm getting at as a way to evaluate facts.
Joel,
right?
are you following this conversation? Because we've done a lot of insider discussion here.
I think I'm getting at least half of it. I'm trying to follow. I guess I am generally just on the side of like, well, I like just narrowing scope to like, well, what am I talking about right now? And I guess like rather than like defining absolutely what truth would mean for all of us all the time, just like sticking to the context of the discussion. And maybe that means you have to re-clarify within each discussion, but yeah, that's like my step back point of view. And I just, I guess I don't have many other opinions, so I haven't been contributing a whole lot. But
Well, we've been talking a lot of insider baseball about like referring to conversations.
Sorry.
Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Same.
yeah, I feel like I've been able to follow a decent amount still. Yeah, I think like the woolly thinking, I didn't know. I'm glad someone asked, but yeah, I don't feel too left out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, part of the context here is that the discussion is a definition for truth that can be used in a specific context, which is talking to people in this group. I don't even know the group that Bentley is talking
just us,
to.
mostly.
Well, within us, it's what is our definition for truth? That's
It's also to help me have a definition when I'm talking to other people about, hey, reason score is trying to get to X. And I can't use the word truth because it means too many things, too many people. So I need a phrase, and I know that if I can get a phrase past this group that means something, then I know I have something I can use elsewhere. Well, maybe.
But that goes against like base objectives, right? We have differing objectives where I don't want to get to X. I like my view of the canonical debate is that it needs to capture all the reasoning, all the reasons, all the evidence, all the supporting facts and arguments and everything. It needs to kind of capture what people think about it. But the point is to help individuals decide what they believe.
Well, yeah, decide. And doesn't that mean, I just press, isn't decision based on truth?
But to me, making a decision is outside the scope of the canonical debate, where once you have personally done the work or are absolutely well informed as to your belief on something, then you go to the outside system and make your decision, and whatever governance process is there is going to handle that. Right?
Yeah,
I would assume a
well,
democratic
right.
sort of thing, but I don't want to build into the system, this is the truth. We're getting to the truth. No, we're getting all the information there, and hopefully people are.
But your end goal is that your hope that people will get to truth. What's the point of doing all of it if they don't eventually make a decision that impacts their lives? It's not an explicit goal within the project, but it is a meta result that you want to happen. So I'd like to be able to discuss it.
Yeah, yes, that is sort of the meta result.
And I think that it cannot be done without building it into a system.
I think it can. That's why
I
I'm
know
like, I think it can be done by phrasing it as belief or
it can
agreement.
within a certain
and-
simplicity. The human mind can handle it, but if you have over 6 or 7 facts, humans can't handle it. Like, okay, so like let's say we did the perfect thing. So the closing the society library.
What do you think that having built this machine should make the decision for us?
No.
Why not?
Well,
Where'd you go?
It's a collaboration between humans and a record keeping device. It's
Well,
not a
but-
make a
but
decision for
If
you.
humans can't take the more than 6 or 7 variables,
If you-
but machines
okay,
can, shouldn't the machine be trusted over the human?
How do you trust your bank account volume? How do you trust the amount in your bank account? You don't remember every transaction, but you can look at every transaction individually, make sure each of them are correct, and then you can trust the math at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the
So
exact
that-
same thing.
Except
you either
that
argue
no,
for
no,
having
it's
a
not
bank
the exact
account
same
or
thing.
against
It's
having a
not the
bank
exact same thing, because I can disagree along the way. I could say I didn't do that transaction, right? I
Right.
can
You
say,
can, but once you've gone through them all and either agreed or disputed the ones that you don't, you can trust the score at the end. So that's the thing. It's not that.
yeah, but I could
system
trust
makes the
my
decision.
score. I can't trust the moment the machine is telling me that something is the truth, and I'm saying I disagree with that, and I've done all the math and I disagree. I no longer want to work with that system. I don't want to trust that machine on any other decisions, because either we're all in 100% agreement about everything, which I don't think will happen, or the machine's going to make a decision about what is truth, and some portion of the population will be immediately alienated and go up in revolt because a machine that is wrong is now running our lives.
It's just a context and a memory so that people don't have to retain all the information in the mind. But having a total at the bottom helps you understand the current government. Like, I can disagree with this, and this in the list, but right now we all agree that the score for the government, the budget, has X in it. And then we can disagree on these 3 things. And then if we correct one of those things, that's why the score at the end isn't absolute truth. This isn't objective truth, but having that score lets my brain not have to do the calculations it can't do of the impact of every translation in there. But I can look at what the system has in it, and then I can understand why the system is wrong.
Do you need a score for each person then individually, and then you could have like a collective score if you want, but no.
It's not a score.
That's the way
it's not a score of what the.
yes.
I mean, that's a helpful meta thing, but so like if we're talking about a shared bank account, does it helpful if I say, oh, I think it has $500 and I think it has 535? Well, let's get in there and figure out which transaction is wrong in this system.
Well, I guess it's like with a bank account, it's more factual, right? Rather than like disagreeable.
Okay.
Or, like, can 2 people agree on?
There is a fundamental
simpler.
point where there can be reasonable disagreement, and it comes up in every court case pretty much in the world, right? In history, which is at some point you rely on human testimony as the source of your fact in absence of a panopticon which recorded everything. And at that point of human testimony, you have to agree or disagree, trust or not trust that person's testimony. And no computer is going to determine that.
That's not right, but that's not, that's orthogonal to what I'm talking about.
It's not, because
No,
it's
no,
it's
no,
a,
because
it's a
what I'm saying
fundamental
that,
leaf
okay,
fact.
so the useful
is
piece
in
of
dispute.
information is that if you have a bank account and you have a disputed transaction in there, then you can then calculate, oh, this is the score with that transaction, and this is the score without this transaction. And now we can have a discussion about that transaction.
Okay.
So let's talk about that transaction until we come to an agreement on that transaction. But when that transaction's solved, we then don't have a disagreement on what the final score is based upon that transaction. That's the point, that right now,
Wait,
people
but do
talk
you
about,
think that you can ever get consensus around whether or not someone is lying?
no.
Then, and do
But
you
I can
agree that human
record the
testimony
impact,
may,
but I can record,
but do you agree that human testimony may come in as a supporting fact or supporting piece of evidence into an important and interesting debate?
yeah.
So you can't have consensus on a fundamental fact. To me, that says you can't have consensus around the truth of something that depends on that fact.
Absolute truth is not what I'm talking about.
But you're
talking about
talking
kind of-
about at the top, something saying whether or not something is true.
No.
Why not?
That's because
what I understood as
we're
truth.
disagreeing about what the word true means here. You're using it
Okay.
in a completely, in a different definition than the one I was talking about, and that's why there's a confusion. I'm
Well, tell me
saying
the
a
definition again.
semblance,
Mhm.
truth is more a rating, a semblance, and an accuracy to reality.
So like probability that this is true.
Yeah, but still,
Okay,
two people
but-
can have two different opinions on why it's true.
But the reason I don't use the word truth is because that word has connotations that will lead to alienation of the people who disagree.
Right, but if what term can we use when we're talking internally about how close this thing relates to reality? Because that's something I need. That is what I'm measuring. And if I
Right.
just don't have a word that I'm allowed to use
I mean,
in group for it, then I can't have a discussion.
I mean, the first thing is, it might help diffuse this by delineating between types of claims, like a fact claim versus, I don't know, what a non-fact claim for now, for lack of a term, but even then, I would prefer to substitute truth for a different term, because one of at least my primary objectives is avoidance of forking, of bifurcation, of alienation, right? It's to be canonical, and it can't be canonical if people don't trust the system and don't believe it and don't use it.
Well, but the system in this case is just a record of claims. It's not truth. So, then, you just need to trust that someone made that claim, and no one's really arguing with that.
But you will have news reports saying the canonical debate says blah, blah, blah is the truth, right? Boycott the canonical debate because it's not the truth.
No, because, well, I'm not suggesting. No, because I mean, well, I'm not suggesting to use this terminology outside the group. But I need a word for similarity to reality. It doesn't have to be truth. I don't care about the word. But I need to have this, the whole point is I'm developing a system that allows people to explicitly say how close this claim is to some sort of objective reality. And it'd be nice to not have to say a sentence every time I say that. But maybe that's asking too. But every time I have that discussion, people will go off on, well, is there an objective reality? It's like, I don't care. I still have to make decisions on a day-to-day basis. If I make the
Right,
wrong
but-
decision, I still could die, right? It's not, doesn't.
The problem is that
philosophical
the
idea.
language doesn't, I guess the English language doesn't contemplate a word for that. There are multiple words depending on context, right? And if you can't have one word,
No,
Well,
there's
one word,
multiple words
and-
that have overlapping over the same
Right.
context, but no one word has that context.
right?
But very few words that we use are specific enough to have an unambiguous meaning. It's just they're close enough. Okay, well, I mean, if it's not doable, that's fine.
Yeah, we've racked our brains over this for years, literally, right? Truth score is what's in the white paper I wrote how long ago, 7 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
5 years ago, I don't remember. And I regret it because it's not a truth score. It's like an agreement score, which doesn't sound as nice.
Yeah, but see, mine's different from an agreement score, but it's not what some people would think of when you say truth score. Because it's what
The
people
question is-
agreed is close to the truth, but isn't the truth.
I mean, in your case, you could just call it the Gullybot score or the reason score.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
call it the reason score, but then they say, "Oh, what's that?"
And then you explain it. You got it. Yeah, but you're
I haven't found an
essentially
explanation.
creating a new word, right? You have to create a new word because the existing words don't work.
No, but what I'm saying is I can't do it. I haven't been able to find an explanation because every word in this area is corrupt and has multiple meanings. So there's no
Right.
way to express it. I mean, we just spent 30 minutes trying to express the idea and everyone keeps going off on trust, keeps going on, is there an objective reality? And it's like, well, none of that has anything to do with it. There is if I take this action, there's a chance I will be doing something that benefits me in the future. And what's the point of doing all this if we're not going to make better decisions? I don't know. I'll keep working on it, but yeah. So I guess it's just a hard, potentially impossible issue.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it from making a decision, right? Actually, agreement works, right? But it's more like you're trying to say it's the should you agree with it thing, right? I mean, should we pass law, blah, 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 public law, put a stop sign here.
Yeah. So,
And-
so, but I'm not rating that if these two people agree 100%, then it'd be 100%. But these two people are agreeing that it is 25%. So then what are they agreeing to?
What do you mean? Wait.
So
If they're
like,
agreeing
let's say
20
something's 50, let's say 50% means like Could be true, could be false. So it's 51%. The two people are in 100% agreement that it's at 51%. What is the 51%? So the agreement score would be 100%. They both agree 100% that it's 51. But what does a 51% probability that it's true mean if we don't have a definition for true? And like you were saying, use the word fact. Well, there's a 51% chance it's a true fact. But if I can't use that term, then what is the 51%? It's a recent score, but what is that? It's a proximity to reality. It's a confidence in its proximity to reality. It might be true, but I can't use the word true.
But because it's contextual, right? Like,
No, I mean,
if you're talking about that stop sign is red, right?
then
Saying
no.
true or false makes sense. People
Well,
understand what that means.
Well, but everything in this system is that. Like if it's not, then it's bad and it'll have a low score because it is not specific enough. It is not, it doesn't change based on its context because it carries its context with it. So otherwise there's no point in discussing the thing. Anyways, I got another meeting. Thanks. I appreciate everyone.
Yeah,
struggling
I have
through
to.
it.
Yeah. All right, man.
Talk to you later.
All right, Joel, good to meet you. If you want to stay on a second, Joel, I mean, I should go too, but there are a couple topics that came up in the discussion that maybe I could backfill you on.
Okay.
That somewhat briefly. How many meetings have you been in? I don't even know who you met or how. You know.
Like 4. I think this is like the 4th one. I've met Bentley and Marc Antoine, and I think Carl. Carl was at a couple, and another person that was new. I think I haven't. I don't think I've met Steven or Felix yet.
Yeah, they've been absent like me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One thing that came up several times is the scoring, and Bentley has his objectives and ways of scoring. He really wants to get at sort of objective reality and facts, and he believes fundamentally deep down, if you go all the way to the bottom, you will find verifiable facts and be able to build up truth from there, right? Whereas me and others don't fully believe in that. With my vision of the canonical debate, I think what's important, as I said, is to capture each person's belief about something.
Mm-hmm.
And we could call it agreement, or you could call it a belief score or whatever. And because, for example, the case of somebody, are they telling the truth or are they lying? And it's a very salient piece of evidence for what happened, right? That division alone, there's no way to proceed unless you make a decision on that. And you can't get group, what was the word I was saying?
Agreement? Consent?
Yeah, you can't get group, I forget, there's a word that starts with C, but
Consensus?
Consensus, thank you. You can't get group consensus. But part of the problem with political debate these days is like, they say that the left and right don't even agree. They're not even debating the same facts, right?
Right.
But the point is to debate the same facts. Then you're debating whether or not this person lied. So you have in the system consensus on this is a fact that is being debated, but each person can take whether or not they believe that, and their belief on that should propagate into other claims that are made based on that, right? That's how an argument map generally works anyway. But there's two aspects to that, which is this fact, how relevant is it to this other claim? And do you believe it's true or not, right?
Right.
And so this is why I'm trying to work with personal belief scores you can have a scoring that aggregates them, right? But each
Mhm.
person, okay, what's my score if I don't believe this thing? Or, and you can put probabilities. In my view, it would be interesting to put like, I think there's an 80% chance they're lying. Okay, so that 80% propagates up. And so we're working on different math and models of how to have that build up on top of other things, so that at the very top, a higher level claim, you can essentially have the math predict for you what should be your belief. And again, this is like what I'm trying to take much care in is not having the system simply say, the system says you should believe this 75%. Instead, it's saying, well, under this model, we calculate that there's like a 75% agreement here. And what's interesting, and it's a learning process, is for you to say, no, like it's almost interesting to say at the top, this is my score for this. I give it a 90%, I agree. And then you go and look at all the different arguments underneath and you're scoring them, and then it rolls it up and you go, actually, you should only believe 60%. And that's the learning point, because you're like, why is that? Right?
You
The
find
point
what was
isn't
missing
the
or
score.
something.
The point is to figure out, interact with the score, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, you figure out what's missing. Maybe it changes your mind because you're like, oh, shoot, I really thought this thing was important, but it turns out, there's all these other things weighing against it that I wasn't considering, or whatever, With that, you can do a lot of things. You can create aggregate scores. So you can see, the average person believes this. You can look at, show me the scores of somebody who has the opposite belief of me. And you can look at what things they're believing. So you get an understanding of how people are seeing this debate, right? And the other part is that inherently any algorithm's gonna have a bias. It's not gonna be good for every case. And so the idea would be to have the scoring model pluggable. So, here's so-and-so's scoring model, and this is what it looks like there. And you can switch around. And the point of having so many options is to underline the fact that the system is not telling you how to think. The system's just helping you imagine or get a view on it, right? And there's also like scoring levels, because a debate map, an argument map, it can have infinite loops. It can be cyclical, and it can go down, down, and down, and down. And so it's kind of like, let's see your score, just at your top level score. Let's see your score one level down, what it would roll up to. Let's see it if you go down 5 branches and roll it up, what it looks like. And so you kind of get also this perspective of, at different levels of complexity, what your score might look like. That's one of the things we've talked about with scoring. And Bentley's is his reason score is an objective scoring mechanism. I don't know if he's talked about how it works with his thing.
Not in detail. Just some sort of rolling up. But
it does rolling up.
I was gonna say, I guess my impression without him having described it was that it was something similar to what you described, except without the like personal belief.
Yeah, which begs the question: where is the score coming from, right?
Just I assume it must be based on like the quantity of claims, or maybe like people
exactly.
On.
It's an objective score based on the structure of the argument map, right? And so it's kind of like, you think it's coming to the wrong conclusion. Well, what argument is missing here that you think, either you agree with it because you can't come up with an argument against it, or there's some argument against it somewhere that is being missed. And so it encourages people to fill out details of the map that had been missed. On the other hand, I would argue it also creates a mechanism for people to attack the map, because you just keep making up spurious arguments in order to slant the but that's that's a detail. That's kind of the gist of our history of discussions on scoring. Opa! Entrega, nem sabia. Obrigado. O código. Carol! Código! Você não pediu comida, entrega? Flávia. Hã? A Flávia? Não, então é Gano. Endereço errado. Qual é o endereço que você tem? 201. Qual bloco? Bloco 1. Aqui é 3. Bloco 3? Bloco 1 tem que descer pro estacionamento ou pro play. E é 2 blocos para lá. É perto da reserva das armas. Tá bom. Tá. Desculpa. Nada. Somebody was making a delivery to the wrong place.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Rats.
Yeah. I guess the other one that I wanted to bring up was the example that Marc-Antoine was discussing. There was an example of a claim that I came up with that really gets to the heart of the difficulty of mapping claims. It's the question is, how would you map this claim? The lockdown, it is worth doing the COVID lockdown because the number of lives saved is worth more than the economic cost. How do you model that?
Right.
I mean, you could just put the sentence, but then what are the arguments and how do you structure that? Because the first thing you have is something, A, worth more than B. So you have a comparison of two things going on there in the claim, right? And then you have one that maybe can be expressed in dollars, but you're comparing it to something that inherently is not in dollars. And so then you need to come up with a conversion, right, that not everybody's going to agree with. So you have to debate about, like, okay, what is the dollar value of a life saved, right? So you essentially have to agree on a model and so on. And so it gets to the heart of a lot of different problems we have in mapping claims, right? If we want them to roll up mathematically, especially, that's where you get to serious problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely see where that's that complicates things. My like inherent reaction to like the statements of like this is worth more than that is, I guess, like in my tool, I prefer like mapping, starting from the problem and being able to compare solutions across like a common set of criteria. So like when you do like this is more than that, you just have like what is the more thing you're comparing that's extracted into like a criteria, and then like each solution like inhibits that or embodies that criteria, and then like for each of those inhibits or embodies is like a claim that you could like would then have that discussion over like, but not that really, that only helps the like abstract thinking about it, not necessarily the like actual concrete, like, well, now we're getting into the numbers. And I personally with my tool, I haven't really gotten into the whole like
this is a big problem that, I mean, I want to do problem solution. I've been calling this problem solution space, right? And as opposed to like maybe we would call it claim space. The canonical debate is right now focused on claim space, or the argument map, because claim space is already complex enough, and it's a fundamental element of solving the problem solution space, right?
Right.
You have to have facts that you agree on. You have to have debates over, well, how much money will this save this? How many lives will be saved here? What about the impact to business? What about the impact to blah, 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 right? So each of those are separate debates. And then you have to roll them all up.
Right.
Yeah. And then you have to deal with competing values, right? Which is why I think problem solution space, kind of the best formulation I see in general is like a matrix, one of those decision matrices.
Right. Yeah.
where it doesn't come down to a true false, we should do this. It comes down to,
Like everybody
you
can
know,
put their opinion well, like in a decision matrix, you can each like rate like, well, this solution has this criteria, a 10,
well,
a
you
10,
essentially
etc.
have to prioritize values. What is the definition of a value? Essentially, it might be a claim of an outcome or an impact to something, right? And then you have to
Right.
rate what is important to me versus, you know, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, I agree. And actually, that's one of the nearby features I'm hoping to put soon in the tool, is just like the decision matrix part of it. But definitely when I say put a feature in, it's like, just the initial thing. And there's a lot, to do with each aspect of it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard problem. It's a really hard problem.
Yeah.
I hope you solve it with your problem solution. Yeah.
Yeah,
The other
we'll see.
one that we alluded to, we talked about a little bit, with the immigration debate, is we
Immigration is
have,
bad.
we have a concept that we call general to specific, right?
Right. Yeah. I think I
Um,
got that, where like when you say immigration, or well, I I guess with immigration, maybe like immigration to the United States or immigration into I don't know, specific state. I don't really know all the immigration levels, but like for world hunger, for example, like, well, we're solving in Nigeria. Oh, now we're solving within like city X in Nigeria. And like, I assume that's what
right.
the you're talking about with general to specific, where it's like just getting more.
Right, exactly. Well, we're trying to figure out, for one thing, what defines a claim, right? And there's a lot of opinions on that. Marc Antoine has helped a lot with going over a lot of linguistics and logic and philosophy in terms of how to structure concepts, right? Ideas. What is a concept and all that. And so, the one that he's presented that I'm kind of working with right now in my head is essentially you have subject, preposition type structures, and then you fill in those pieces, these linguistic structures, with definitions, right? So you have, in that structure, immigration is bad, right? And that's kind of like triplets and that sort of thing in the simplest form. But you have immigration, which is something that needs to be defined. And then you have is bad, which also needs to be defined, right?
Right.
And yet, you could probably debate that. Humans could
Yeah.
certainly debate it. They would just start going, but they would kind of fill in the gaps and remove the ambiguity in their own heads, in their own different ways. So you would be debating different things.
Yeah.
So that's about as general as you can get. And then there are different ways of being specific. One is you can make a less ambiguous or more specific definition, for immigration. You can go through types of immigration and kind of a taxonomy of something of, are you talking about undocumented immigration? Undocumented immigration in Texas, in Waco, Texas in 1943 or something, right? So
Right.
you kind of either keep disambiguating one of your definitions, or you keep tacking on more entities of, is bad for, immigration is bad for the residents who work unskilled jobs, right? So there's different ways of getting more specific.
Right.
And then there's a question of how do you organize your argument map if somebody brings up a study that says, well, here's one study that showed that people in residents of Ohio actually increased employment through immigration in the 1950s or something, right? So somebody posts a study there. Where does that argument go? Does it go to immigration is bad? Does it go to immigration in Waco, Texas in 1943, or is bad for unskilled labor? Does it go to, you know, which debate are you going to post it on? And what's interesting is we've talked about definitions or concepts. Well, we've talked about relevance, right? Which
Right.
is
Yeah, it seems
how
like you could-
relevant is that study to each of these specific debates,
Yeah.
right? Which could be determined by a human, but there's also a machine automation type of relevance you could tie to if you can match your arguments. Like an argument as we see it is essentially a base claim or a one or more premises is making a conclusion, which is the claim it's targeting, right? And so then you have a relevance of that argument, right? But if you have a premise, which is a claim down here, that is made up of these definitions, these entities, then you have kind of an objective measure of a match between the entities here, the concepts here, of what kind of immigration are we talking about, when and where, and the claim is targeting. So a study about workers in Ohio in the 1950s is going to be a mismatch with, you know, or it, you know, you'll see that there's not enough, there's a lot more specificity, and so the more specificity you get, the better match score. Whereas, so
kind of like if you defined like labels and like label being like year or like location, and then just you could automatically calculate how relevant based on the percentage of labels that are like the same.
yeah, well, there's
as
different
your-
ways you could do it, but you could imagine some sort of mathematical algorithm where the computer would essentially find the optimal place to make this argument. Knowing that, because look, you've got a study, right? And you pointed at the argument about the debate over immigration in Waco in the 1940s or whatever, right? The debate, immigration is bad. At some level in there, somebody will use the outcome of the debate on was it good or bad in Waco as an argument to support. So when you have this tree of general to specific, the specific debates end up being arguments in support of or against the higher level one, you know, in a bizarre sort of way. So it kind of does roll up in a different way. And essentially by placing that, you don't need to repeat arguments at different levels is what I'm trying to say. You could optimize by having that argument being made at the point where it's most relevant and having it influence that one debate down low, because that should influence higher up, more general debates, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think.
Yeah. So that's some background on all the different, like we just kind of referred to them in a couple seconds in passing as as examples. So I was sure that was kind of to some degree going over your head, but
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the explanations. I did mention that like I lurked a little bit, so like I've watched a random couple of videos, and like I definitely did not have all the context that you have just given, but I was kind of like somehow hanging on a little bit at least. So
cool.
Yeah.
All right, I really need to get back to work, but
all right, sweet.
good to meet you. Good.
Yes, thanks.
Where do you live? Where are you?
I'm in Chicago,
Okay,
Illinois.
cool.
So
Maybe you're the
yeah.
first Chicago member we've had.
I don't know.
I'm
I don't know
in
anybody else lives.
yeah, I'm in Rio de Janeiro.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, in
nice.
Brazil. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm American. I'm from California, but I'm in Rio. Yeah.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
All right.
Well, see ya.
See you around then. Take care.
Thanks. You too.